Gracias, Manolo. Signing up for Boy Scouts would come in handy. No, not me. My nephew. I caught him using a hairpin to break into the donation box at the elementary school last year during parent-teacher conferences. And I told him that I wouldn't tell his mother if he showed me how to do it. Then, I made him split the score with me. But those K-5 asshats only carry 1s and 5s. Don't feel badly for them, though. They're all a bunch of little fascists. Who else is drinking? Anyone? Just me? Salud. You must think I'm some sort of a bank robber or jewel thief, woman of the night. Sadly, no. I'm a public school teacher, 34 years, 6th and 7th grade English. I started my career right here in 1989 in Maricopa County School District, and I've been here ever since, hopping around from Phoenix to Sun City West, and finally ending up here in Goodyear. This is 2 days ago. That Muppet-faced twat from Fox News, what's his name? Tucker Carlson, has been having a field day with everything from what I wear to who I dated in undergrad. But it's not my fist they're afraid of. It's my brain. The warden lent me this room so I could prepare my defense, hence the books and files and piles of evidence. I grew up right outside Phoenix to a Mexican father and a Puerto Rican mother. Daddy was a doctor, and mother was addicted to her daily dose of value and pork. So I was mostly left by myself to read all day while she chain smoked in the bedroom. I would walk into Daddy's study each week to pick a new book from the shelves and shelves full of leather-bound titles, the water stains, the thin yellowing pages, the warm scent of cherry tobacco. Becoming a teacher seemed natural to me. I thought that middle school was where I belonged. My first few years on the job weren't that bad. My students did well, they scored above average on the state exams, and I took home Teacher of the Year twice. Once in 1997 and again in 2002. And no, neither of those came with a raise. But the district did manage to give me a $15 Dunkin' Donuts gift card taken out of the pool of yearly teacher donations and bonuses. After so many years smelling roses, after long enough they too start to smell like shit. No child left behind? Yeah, right. You try training a bunch of preteens to beat a single test where everything, their success, our jobs, and teacher funding are on the line. Tell me how that works out for you. Gary Goldwater Elementary is divided into two main buildings. The lower school, which houses grades K through 5, and the upper school, which holds grades 6 through 8. I started my career there back in 1989. And I was scouted by the principal, an eccentric man, Roberto Rivera, who was known for always wearing green and brown plaid with the same ratty pair of corduroy pants. And he always wore a sash around his waist with all these tiny little bells attached, sort of like a belly dancer. He'd saunter down the halls. He was followed by a chorus of tinkling, so everybody always knew when he was near. Roberto held a master's in education, a PhD in English, and he was the National Adult Hopscotch Champion in 1987. He was legendary in the school district. So, when he asked me to teach 6th and 7th grade, I couldn't say no. My first few years at Goldwater, they were mostly pleasant, minus the detrimental budget cuts. Then 2 years ago, everything changed. Principal Rivera called all the teachers into the auditorium in late August, and with panic in his eyes, he told us that State Senator John Peter Bishop and his wife Patricia would be enrolling their children in Goldwater that year. They had 4 children, each more piggy-looking than the last. And they were abandoning their private Christian education in an effort to appear more relatable to the common voter. My first reaction to the news was, so what? But then I Googled the state senator. He had large, dead blue eyes, a plastic toothy grin, and he wore ill-fitting designer suits that all together screamed, I traffic teenage girl. His wife, Patricia, was skeletal, pony-faced, and she wielded 2 silicone trophies that sat up there with impressive precision, I might add. Each outfit was perfectly fitted, each smile perfectly calculated to show just the right amount of lip, like this. And hanging from her arm was the most enticing assortment of designer handbags I've ever seen. A little known secret about me is that I love fashion. Last year, I assigned the longest chapter of The Giver to my students during first period so that I could Google the release of John Galliano's spring-summer collection and imagine myself parading past the main office wearing the full catalog of retro revivals. For a teacher, it's just a fantasy. But for Patricia Bishop, it was her waking reality. In those photos I saw black leather Chanel clutch, the 2020 Hermes Kelly Cellier with 24-karat gold hardware finishings, and finally, the 2018 brown Stella McCartney saddle bag. Did I resent her because she owned what appeared to be upwards of $500,000 in luxury-labeled accessories? Was it that she could slip her slim hips into any size 0 backless dress that her stylist gave her? Or was it because without even hearing her voice, I could so clearly picture her pursing her lips and saying, then let them eat cake. Either way, they were coming to Goldwater Elementary, and I had marked my enemy from afar. Hello, sweetheart. You have the cutest dimples I've ever seen. You must be Angelica? Oh, excuse me, Angelique. And you're going into 5th grade? Mrs. Applebaum is so lucky to have you. That means that next year I'll be your English teacher. Isn't that just wonderful? It was an awful interaction, but I had to keep my eye on the youngest, oldest bishop child. A few months into the school year, I went to see Principal Rivera. I had to tell him that Applebaum couldn't hack it. I found her sobbing into a tub of egg salad during lunch after receiving an angry note from a parent. When I found Principal Rivera, he was sitting with the lights off, wrapped head to toe in a scarf, chamomile tea bags over both eyes. It's Patricia Bishop. She's concerned about the reading list. She says we're teaching fake history. The other parents aren't happy at all. I've been receiving emails by the hour. The bishops are threatening to pull the funding for the new library. Upon enrolling in Goldwater Elementary, the bishops had committed a $100,000 donation to completely rebuild the library. Patricia Bishop used this as an excuse to drop in whenever she liked, wandering the halls at will, sitting in on classes, interrogating faculty and administrative staff at will. Decided to go to the next PTA meeting to see what was going on myself. The room was packed. Everyone was buzzing with anxious chatter. On the podium, I saw pale Principal Rivera dabbing beads of sweat with his pocket square. Behind him sat the assistant principals. And to my surprise, the superintendent, Mr. Walker. The room erupted into jeers and hissing. There were cries of, "Resign! Resign, you coward!" A young mother with long dark hair took to her feet and exclaimed, "What kind of a school are you running, Rivera? You expect my child to sit in history class being told that she should be ashamed of her heritage?" Another mom with yellowing teeth launched an empty tub of Pringles at the podium and with trembling rage exclaimed, "This is all a bunch of Marxist bullshit and you know it." Then, from the third row came a sobering cry of, "Enough!" From her sleek blonde hair, her pointy nose, and her look of smug confidence, I knew who this was. "Thank you, everyone, for your passion." Her voice oozed with condescension. "I know that tensions are high. However, you cannot deny that the Christian values that brought us Western culture and the Declaration of Independence are under attack in our public schools. Radical literature like Frederick Douglass are federally sanctioned propaganda. The fact that our ancestors were supposedly bad people means that we are too. Let me be clear. Instilling shame and teaching our children to be disrespectful of authority will not be tolerated." There was an erupt of applause. Superintendent Walker took to his feet and, shooing Principal Rivera aside, approached the podium, took off his 10-gallon hat and twirled his mustache. "Thank you, Mrs. Bishop. I give you my word, ma'am, and you can tell your husband this, that I will personally evaluate the curriculum here at Goldwater moving forward. No child will be made to feel shame or discomfort. In the words of the great Dr. King, everyone will be judged not by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character." The following Tuesday, Principal Rivera's desk had been emptied. Patricia Bishop had made quite the impression on the other parents. Her clips of her speech had made the rounds on TikTok and Twitter. The PTA president immediately resigned, and she was put in the top spot. That summer was filled with dark looks and anxious chatter. It felt like Poland in 1939. The armies were at the gates, and we knew that at any moment, Patricia Bishop would once again march her army of righteous housewives straight through the Brandenburg Gate of Goldwater Elementary. And this time it would be through our building. And little Angelica Bishop was the Trojan horse. The first day of school was hot. And I mean public school hot. The 6th period bell rang immediately after recess, and in cascaded a flood of 32 11-year-olds reeking of handball, sweat, and lunch meat. And then in she pranced, all in pink, cutting through the chaos, smelling like bubble gum, her light blonde hair delicately tied up into 2 perfect little pigtails. With rosy cheeks, she gave me the sweetest smile and placed a ruby red delicious apple on my desk. In case any of you has children, don't send them to school with an apple. Nobody wants an apple. If you really want to be kind, send a Xanax. Parent-teacher conference was a night where I was feeling distant and zoning out. I confused Tiffany C with Tiffany F. I told the Markhams that their little daughter was as cute as a button, to which they responded that their son was being bullied by his peers because of his medically incurable acne. And then at 8:42 the minute, there was a knock on the door, and in walked Patricia Bishop, graceful and elegant as ever, wearing a backless black dinner dress, narrow heels that were made for stepping on throats. She smiled broadly and took a seat directly in front of me. Miss Perez, how is Angelique doing in your class? I told her the truth, that she was doing well, that she could take the state test tomorrow and pass with flying colors. Patricia Bishop threw back her chest, gave a faint sigh of relief. Being so close, I felt like I was looking into the 2 eyes of God. I do have a quick concern, she continued. It's my understanding that Mrs. Dance is going to be beginning a unit on the Holocaust. I just want to be sure that the students are receiving both perspectives. Both perspectives. What does that mean, both perspectives? I thought, what book can I assign that shows both perspectives? Then it came to me. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. A heartbreaking classic that tells the unlikely story about a friendship between 2 boys. One, the son of a German officer living on the outskirts of a concentration camp. And the other, a Jewish boy living behind the barbed wire, trapped there. And as luck would have it, somehow it had slipped through Superintendent Walker's new evaluation process and was well within my rights to assign. So I did. 2 weeks later, after the second night of assigned reading, my door burst open, and like an angry bull, in marched Patricia Bishop, red-faced and foaming at the mouth. How dare you assign the boy in the striped pajamas? Have you any idea how damaging and offensive this material is? How can you sit there and assign this propaganda to a child? What is wrong with you? And then I stood up to my tallest height and I said, this book has been on the approved reading list for years. If someone else's child is old enough to be starved and gassed to death in a concentration camp, then your precious children are old enough to learn about it. She looked at me as if I had slapped her across the face. How dare you defy me? I'm PTA president and I say this book is not approved. And it was then that I made the biggest mistake of my career. I pursed my lips, threw back my chest, and with every ounce of tip that I could muster, I said, ma'am, your guidelines mean nothing to me. If you want to control the reading list, then you're just going to have to run for school board yourself. And then I saw that glint in her eye, that smirk of smug rebelliousness that I haven't seen since Brett Appleton, class of 2006, when I wagged my finger at him for farting at the girls at recess. I had dug my foot in the sand, and this country club Bible-thumping Barbie doll had taken it as a direct threat. A double dog dare, as the students would say. Vote for Patricia Bishop on Maricopa County School Board. Within days of her tenure, a wave of changes and educational decrees had taken place. Harry Potter, banned. Animal Farm, banned. Malcolm X, Frederick Douglass, banned. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, banned. A new law was passed, prohibiting the teaching of any material that caused shame, trauma, sadness, or discomfort of any kind. As a result, we had to eliminate the Holocaust unit entirely. An anti-Marxist law was passed that bans the teaching or even the mention of the word in a classroom setting. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, banned. The Hunger Games, banned. Then I received a phone call from Superintendent Walker. What do you mean you found an illegal book in Angelica Bishop's backpack? With my name in it? I didn't give her the giver. The little narc stole it. I was lending the book to Bethany Spaulding, who really wanted to read something by a black author. Letting me go? 35 years on the job and you're firing me over a book? But I didn't assign it. I didn't force anybody to read it. No, sir. I haven't seen the new educational decree. All teachers and staff are hereby prohibited from distributing any personal items, materials, or literature to any student for any reason. So there I was without a job. My days of gloom and doom ended when I received a flyer under my door advertising the opening of the new library at Goldwater Elementary. Construction had finally finished and there would be a short ceremony and the unveiling of the new mural. The main attraction, however, was for something called the Freedom Purge. Do you love your country? Are you concerned about the communist Marxist literature that seeks to alienate your children? Sponsored by the Maricopa County School Board and the Goodyear Southern Baptist Congregation, the Freedom Purge will provide fun and inclusion for the whole family. We seek to identify, isolate, and purge our public school libraries of the literature that puts your children most at risk. Join us as we lead by example. So on the night of April 2nd, The night of the Freedom Purge, I suited up. I put on all black. I tied back my hair, put a bandana around my head. I put on my Che Guevara pin just to piss them off. When I arrived, the event was in full swing. Dozens of cars and pickup trucks lined the lot. Radios blared, burgers grilled. Directly in front of the school, on a grassy knoll in front of the library, stood a tall, ominous pile. Hundreds, thousands of books, 6 feet tall, towered over the scene. Sitting in a lawn chair serenely was Patricia Bishop, holding in her hand what appeared to be a Harry Potter book, while she teared out the pages luxuriously and tossed them one by one on the pile. Around her, a regiment of 2nd and 3rd graders danced happily. I ran out of my car and approached the group. Some of the children called my name. Angelica raised a bony finger. "Mommy, it's her!" With a raised fist, I said, "I'm here to claim these books." "We have something special planned for them," said one of the littlest students. I quickly identified him as the youngest Bishop boy. "These books need to be purged. Purged from the school and purged from the county," said Patricia. The 3rd grade dad stepped forward smoking a cigarette. And it was then that my nose picked up on something distinct. "Gasoline! You can't burn these books, no!" "Either we burn them or we burn you," giggled the littlest Bishop boy. All the children laughed and chanted a jubilant chorus of, "Hey ho, hey ho, these Marxist books have got to go." See, I told you they were all a bunch of little fascists. Before I could make another move, there was a flash of embers, and I saw in slow motion as the cigarette took a somersault through the air and landed directly on the pile. There was a pull of oxygen, and they burst into flames, flames that spread, engulfing everything, from Percy Jackson to Stuart Little, the pig man, the book thief. I could even see the burning cover of Flat Stanley as it was pulled into the flames and turned to ashes. So I tried to put out the flames. Everyone screamed, lawn chairs flew, parents grabbed their children and ran back to their cars. Meanwhile, I was on top of the nearest pile, trying to stamp it out with my foot desperately. "The library!" I looked up, and lo and behold, there was Goldwater Elementary up in smoke. There was the beautiful banner, the mural, the windows broken, the mural with all the children holding hands around a banner of red, white, and blue, charred and peeling, gone. Everything was gone. The only thing I managed to save was this, Fahrenheit 451. Seems kind of poetic, doesn't it? The temperature that paper burns. When the police arrived, they threw me against the cruiser. I had been identified as the instigator of the fire. They quickly cuffed me and hauled me to county jail. 2 counts of criminal intent, 4 counts of misdemeanor against a minor, 2 counts of child abuse, 1 count of first-degree arson, and a hate crime. How does a defendant plead? The defendant pleads not guilty. By that afternoon, I was known coast to coast as the teacher that burned books. Little Angelica Bishop had told federal investigators that I had tackled her to the ground, kneeled on her arms, and fed her pigtails to the flames. Patricia Bishop made the rounds on all the Sunday morning talk shows talking about how my Marxist liberal PC agenda had disrupted a peaceful gathering of prayer and community. Newspapers across the country plastered images of the burning mural as evidence of a hate crime towards the heart and soul of America. School boards everywhere were eliminating library books by the hundreds, citing that they were a risk to national security. Senator Bishop announced his presidential campaign and overnight received millions of dollars in dark money. Nobody believed me when I said I didn't do it. None of my colleagues came to my defense. It seemed that everybody just wanted to stay out of it. Nobody wanted to stand up for what was right. I'll be okay, but so many won't. With every book we burn a piece of our literacy, a piece of our history. When you light a fire, you can't stop it. It takes everything in its path.
Javier and I'm your host. By now, I'm sure you all know that for the last 6 months, a wave of teacher protests have been gripping the nation. Public educators in 14 states are now on strike over low wages and what many have been calling the Freedom Purge, a nationwide rejection of literature that has resulted in 37 book burnings across the country. Penelope Perez, a former English teacher in the Maricopa County Public School District, was arrested last year following the destruction of Barry Goldwater Elementary in Goodyear, Arizona. The notorious fire, in which an estimated 1,200 books were burned, was the first and largest burning of literature and has since resulted in a national outrage. Ms. Perez was embroiled in claims of criminal conspiracy. Parents and students at the county school board asserted that Ms. Perez engaged in the teaching of illegal material, promoted the burning of core American documents, and sought to force Marxist literature onto her students by threat of violence and intimidation. The school board also claimed, prior to her termination, that Ms. Perez obsessively held on to notions of racial inequality and cultivated an environment specifically designed to make the white students in her class feel shame. This sparked outrage and debate on both the left and the right, further parting the Red Sea between two groups of parents who both say, enough is enough. Republican candidate and the presumptive nominee for President of the United States, John Peter Bishop, has made the issue the center of his campaign, further thrusting a divided nation into turmoil. In a wild turn of events, a federal judge has just recently thrown out the case against Ms. Perez, after a series of emails came to light in which Senator Bishop and his wife openly discussed coordinating with their children to lie about the claims made against Ms. Perez. In a decisive victory for teachers everywhere, Ms. Perez has been released from federal custody, and you've guessed it right, folks, she is our guest here tonight. Without further ado, please welcome to the stage, Penelope Perez. Good evening, Penelope, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on the 10 a.m. Tonight Show.
Thank you for having me, Javier.
Freedom looks good on you.
Thank you very much.
So let's dive right into it. How did you feel when that federal judge threw out the case against you?
Honestly, overwhelming relief. Not for me, but for the 52 million young people that currently attend public schools in our country. You know, it's been such a long road to get to where we are today. A road that's been paved with good intentions. But at this point, Javier, we have to see that we have multiple perspectives in this country, and you know, we have to honor all of them.
Now, I just want to briefly address some of your students out there. 7 young people. Only one of whom is actually the former student of yours came forward to testify against you. The claims ranged from encouraging students to burn copies of the Constitution to quite literally holding a young woman's face to the fire that they claim you started. All of those allegations have since been proven false. What would you say to those children?
Well, there's nothing I can say because the no contact order is binding. But if I could address those hypothetical students, what I tell them is that they're no different from any other students I've ever had. The beauty of a public education is that it seeks to give children experiences that they wouldn't have if they were at home. It seeks to open up conversations, and that's a good thing.
Now, there are many controversial perspectives out there, right? For example, the notion that the Holocaust didn't happen, right? Or the notion that the Founding Fathers were blameless patriots. Now, isn't honoring those perspectives exactly what you're against?
Believe it or not, Javier, no. I can teach and engage with anyone's perspective, but what's happening in school systems across the country is that people are shutting down conversations before we even have them. People are so set to that notion of we can't talk about this, we can't have our children think differently from the way we think. So they do anything that they can to keep children from having those conversations.
Now, what I find most striking about what you just said is that the issue does not seem to be about race, it doesn't seem to be about history, but rather the fact that people don't want to talk about race or history.
That's so true, Javier. In this country now, we have, with social media, with changing demographics, it's all demanding that we have these conversations. And the fact that we haven't been having them doesn't mean that we didn't need to have them. It just means that the predominant narrative was so strong that it was simply impossible to have these conversations.
Yeah, I completely agree. But what I feel like a lot of people are saying, what a lot of folks at home might be saying is, yes, okay, a lot of things need to change, not everything is perfect, but a lot of these changes that are happening in our society, in our public schools, are happening just too quickly. What would you say to that?
I'd say define quickly. In 1865, Black Americans owned 0.5% of the wealth in this country. Do you know how much that is now?
No.
1.5%. In 1989, when I began teaching, a Latina woman like myself earned 52 cents on average to the dollar of an average white man. Today, that number is 55%. That doesn't sound like change that's happening too quickly to me. To cover our eyes and ears and to say that the Holocaust didn't happen, that things are radically different from the way they were when at the beginning of the civil rights movement is simply to spit on all the data that says otherwise.
Now, at surface level, teaching history and book burnings appear to be two separate issues. And yet, in your story, they're intertwined.
Javier, they are intertwined. In social studies, we learn history. And in literature, we decide whether or not we're going to repeat it.
Now, I do just want to switch gears here and quickly address State Senator John Peter Bishop and his unlikely catapult in the polls. He's now in first place, and the presumptive nominee to challenge the president in the general, and that's largely because of his anti-literature, anti-critical race theory stance. Do you believe that his campaign will be successful, and do you see yourself as having played a role in that?
I'd say that the state senator has zero experience. And I say that he doesn't have the right to be the commander-in-chief of his own family, let alone the United States of America. And if I had anything to do with it, maybe I was the spark, but the fuel that was lighting those flames has been pouring out for decades.
Now, Penelope, I also just want to take the time to thank you for all the work that you do as an educator. I think it's incredibly important for all of us to acknowledge all the teachers and educators out there that have had an impact on all of our lives. So thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Interviewing you has truly been the pleasure of a lifetime.
The pleasure's all mine, Javier.
Now, I'm sorry, Penelope, but we do need to ask, who are you wearing tonight, and can you tell us all a little bit more about that?
I'm wearing Oscar de la Renta's Scholastic Constellations cocktail dress with the vegan leather embossed clutch. I'm partnering with them to create a whole new line called Educate. 10% of the global proceeds will go towards promoting literacy, and I'll be walking for them in May in Milan to promote and support public educators everywhere.
Now that is just incredible. Penelope Perez, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Her new book, What My Teacher Taught Me, will be coming out this Friday. Please make sure to pick up a copy of yours digitally or at a bookstore near you. We'll be back after the break.
Y ahí lo tenían, amigos, la presentación que hubo hoy. Así que vengan mañana, donde van a ver más presentaciones y son completamente gratis. En el 420 de la 15th Street en Julian City es el William B. Mosto Cultural Center. Un beso, espero que se lo hayan disfrutado. Compártanlo.